name and your occupation, and basically what you do or what you did here, and then maybe touch a little bit on the banks and like the problems in society and the stuff that you're trying to work on, and then we're gonna finish with where you can where people can get you, stuff like that. So I'm gonna ask these questions if you're okay with that.
Yeah, pile it on.
Awesome.
I'm better with a jog, like a jog question.
A jog?
Like a jog, like jog me into what you want to talk about, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel better that way. So.
Sounds good. Well, let's just start with introductions, who you are and what you do.
I'm Brian Thiessen. I'm running as an independent candidate for the Kelowna West riding as an MLA. What I do right now is help people. So if it's a company, if someone's an entrepreneur, if it's a young adult that wants to learn a bit more about finance, or if it's anyone that wants to look at any of my videos that they see online, I'm helping them get the information, the correct and proper information that's more truth-based about what's really going on. That's kind of what I do.
Awesome. As in our meeting that we just had, we had a local supporting locals first meeting and a meetings of the minds that you sat with Kevin and talked with some of the issues that are going on with our administration and our government, specifically with the whole, it was a Nexon, like the gas companies holding the shares and the stocks of the greenhouse or the tax carbon program or something, and we are actually the investors through our pension plans and stuff into these companies. They're trying to sell us this salad, which basically is just robbing us of our funds to sell it, bring it back to the corporations and basically, from my understanding, the people with the money.
Yes. Yeah, basically what's happening is, let's say if we take something like carbon taxes, the reason why it's being implemented is very simple. We've seen the price of commodities plummet all across the board, whether it's oil, gold, natural gas, for a variety of reasons, demand, too much coming online, whatever it might be. So the problem is we had this big crash, if you will, and that's pretty much what it is. Something drops, taking oil, for example, 150 to 50, that's a crash. 150 to 20, that's a crash. That happened. So they came up with a thing to say, okay, well, we're going to have these carbon taxes. And they made it be a big pretend that all these big companies, well, we're going to get them in their pocketbook, and all these things are going to happen. But then all of a sudden, over time, everything started shifting, and all these big companies started being on the board of things like Smart Prosperity and so on. And part of the reason is the primary investor in all of these companies is our government. If anyone looks, if you're a public sector worker or if you're a private sector, it doesn't matter. If you look inside the Canada Pension Plan or British Columbia Investment Management Corporation, which does all your public service employees and a few others. Could be Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, could be CalPERS, like the California plan. They really are all the same. They're all heavily invested in these companies. So when you used to look back and say, well, why does Exxon never pay tax? Why does these guys never pay taxes? Well, it's very simple. The more taxes they pay, the less return on investment that pension fund's going to have. Now, the trick now is that most of these pension funds are insolvent. And this is what people are trying, it's a challenge for me to try and help people understand this, because they just don't believe it's possible. And most of the time that happens when it's a situation where it's totally happening and possible, they just don't want to believe it. So the primary investors in these companies are the very government that's saying that we're going to charge taxes to these companies, but they're not going to. It's only going to be a tax on the middle class, because we're always the ones that has to pay, or the poor, or the people who are that step up from the middle class, or whoever it is. It's not going to be one set of people. It's not going to be the government and those companies.
What is your stance on marijuana? I'm sorry, I'm throwing you a little loop ball, but of Trudeau, you can say whatever you want or not. I saw some people smoking in the background.
Okay.
I did this out or whatever, but what do you think about the legislation, and is this something, sorry, you want to comment about? Okay.
Just wait for you. Yeah.
So basically, with Trudeau's new plan of legislating cannabis and still keeping it as a criminal offense if you're driving and all this, how do you see the sustainability of weed within like the future in Canada, let's say, if that makes sense?
Okay, so part of the reason why it's been such a long delay on something that a lot of Canadians, if not a decent majority of Canadians do either daily or have done, or weekly or monthly, whatever it is, or some are taking it from pain. The reason why that I look at this is a plant is a totally different entity than something like an opiate or a chemicalized patentable drug. Now again, if we go back and when you look, and I've done videos on this, when you look at the pension plans, the primary owners of pharmaceutical companies are our government. And the primary people who donate to the campaigns of politicians are pharmaceutical companies. So it's really a hand-in-hand relationship. The problem with marijuana or cannabis or whatever it is you want to call it, even CBDs, which should be 100% legal, because there's nothing showing that stuff's harmful in any way. The problem with cannabis is that what if there's a potential that this had a 20% cut into certain markets like cancer drugs, pain drugs, things like this? Well, that's going to cause a problem.
To the pharmaceutical industry. Yes.
So, and when people hear this, they really have to understand the return on investment from a pharmaceutical company into a politician is the highest of any style of company. So we're talking about oil companies, whatever along down the line. Nobody gets a higher return than pharmaceutical companies. So if these things can come in and say, hey man, I can go from 6 medications down to 3. I can go from 2 to 0, whatever it might be. Well, that's one less client. What if he tells the other person? What if everyone starts figuring this stuff out? Sales go this way. So who has the biggest problem? Our pension plans. Why? Because they own all those stocks. So they're desperately seeking yield. So if they can't get it from there, and there's a competition that comes into the marketplace, well, that's a problem. Here's the other problem. You lose billable hours. So you lose billable hours as lawyers. You lose confiscation of your assets, civil asset forfeiture. You lose that. So if you're a police agency and you make your primary money maker is going into someone's house, busting up all their stuff and stealing the actual property, the cars and everything and selling it off and taking that money and putting it into your department, you lose that. So in Canada, we're really bad for that. In the United States, civil asset forfeiture takes more money than robberies, burglaries, all that stuff combined. So when you start thinking about these things and you peel back the numbers, then all of a sudden you start saying, well, if these police officers aren't having to go into these places and bust them or pull people over and do all these things, well, what if that's 10-20% less labor for those guys? So now all of a sudden you have 10-20% less cops, 10-20% less money going into those very pension plans. So when you start everything and you look at everything, you have to always follow the money. So to me, the reason why it's not being legalized is because they want to take the mom and pop stores out of the situation and make sure it ends up in the hands of like a Shoppers Drug Mart, Loblaws, London Drugs, who are going to be the primary distributors over time. This to me is why he's saying we're going to wait till 2018, because they have to go through that rigmarole to make sure those steps are set up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brian, if you'd like to maybe finish with where we can reach you, what's your platform, and maybe a message for anyone who's listening.
Yeah, my website, brianformla.com, so it's like Brian Formula without the U, brianformla.com, because I'm Brian for MLA, and I want you to be for me, and my name's Brian. So that's also my Twitter and my Facebook. Basically, my videos are going to describe where I'm at. It's not going to change too much. I mean, things change over time, but really what I'm showing is the basis of the platform, following the money, following everywhere where it goes so we can decide where it's being wasted, so then we can claw it back from the wasteful areas and put it to areas that are productive. Early childhood education, education itself, healthcare, all the things that we're actually wasting money on other stuff instead of on these primary things. And by wasting, I mean it's being taken by corrupt entities inside our government. So that's what I want to show people. That's why I want to expose. My platform is very simple. Stop wasting and start putting it in places where it needs to go. It can't get any easier than that.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right.